A debate over taxes in South Carolina is now settled. The state Senate voting against a bill to align South Carolina with federal tax law and changes made by the One Big Beautiful Bill, citing concerns over lawmakers' long-term plan to eliminate the state income tax. State House reporter Stephen Biddix has more.
With the Senate voting not to conform, you no longer need to worry about whether you will need to change or amend your taxes this tax season.
To conform or not to conform, that's the question.
Lawmakers say the decision keeps roughly $288 million in state coffers, money that would have otherwise gone back to South Carolina taxpayers. Senator Tom Davis calling it a tough choice.
I guess what makes this so difficult, did you know, is that here and now, if we do not conform, the bottom line for this year in any way, or taxes being paid, South Carolina is going to pay $288 million more.
But they have their reasons, citing the impact on other tax-cutting legislation. Governor Henry McMaster recently signed a separate bill that could eliminate the state income tax over time and decouple South Carolina from the federal standard deduction starting next year.
We're not going to be beholden to what Congress does for our tax policy, that we're going to set our own tax policy, and that we're going to have more people paying less as opposed to fewer people paying more, which will allow us to drastically reduce income tax rates.
Massey adds losing that revenue would actually slow down the process of dropping the income tax rate.
This is a much better policy. This is much better, much more beneficial to the taxpayer than a short-sighted gain.
The South Carolina Department of Revenue already extended the deadline to file your state taxes to October 15th in case something happened with this bill. So if you've been waiting to file your taxes in case you were going to have to change them down the road, you are now in the clear, barring any changes. Reporting at the State House, I'm Stephen Biddix.